Congressman Dan Goldman didn't waste a second. He looked straight at FBI Director Kash Patel and asked the question everyone's been waiting for: do the Epstein files contain names of powerful political figures? What followed wasn't a clear answer. It was hesitation, excuses, and a back and forth that exposed just how much the public still doesn't know. Goldman pressed harder, citing court orders, sealed documents, and promises that were never kept. Patel tried to shield himself behind legal technicalities, but Goldman, a former prosecutor, wasn't buying it. The tension in that room wasn't just political theater, it was a battle over truth, transparency, and whether the FBI is protecting powerful names connected to Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein files.
I didn't say it was a complicated question, I just didn't hear you, so my apologies. We have released where President Trump's name's in the Epstein files and everybody else, and all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released.
All right, so let's go through that. You're referring to court orders that prohibit you from releasing grand jury testimony under Rule 6E. Is that what you're referring to when you say as the law allows?
That's a piece of it.
Really? What other evidence do those three court orders you cited prohibit from being released?
Information that was collected pursuant to those search warrants that were limited
Wrong.
in fashion.
Wrong. That's not what the court order says, and that's not under 6E.
And you're talking, and I said that's 6E, and I said there was others, and I'm answering that. There are sealed court order documents. There are protective orders.
They are unsealed as part of discovery given to Ghislaine Maxwell. They are no longer sealed.
That's just not true. We can argue about it all you want.
Okay, well, you agree that there are, so your testimony here is that the reason why you are not releasing all of the videos that you have acknowledged, there are so many, and that the FBI spent thousands of hours of reviewing, the photographs, the photographs that you have. You're saying that you're not releasing those because there's a court order requiring them to be sealed? Is that your testimony?
Never said that about the videos. On the totality of the videos, of the thousands of images that were seized pursuant to the search warrants executed at the time, the overwhelming majority of that video is pornographic material that was downloaded from the internet and child sexual abuse material. We will never release that.
Well, as you should not release the victims, but if there are videos that relate to others who Epstein trafficked to, such as maybe Prince Andrew, or photographs, that you have total control to release.
Yes, and if it exists.
And so why haven't you released it?
Why are you supposing that that is a fact when in fact it is false? Are you saying that
you're saying that none of the videos relate to anything relevant to the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring?
Every single video that we have collected pursuant to the prior search warrants has been examined for the last 10 years. And every single video has been utilized for whatever prosecutions were able to be legally brought.
I'm not asking about prosecutions. I'm asking about why you aren't releasing the full Epstein files, including the names of people who were involved in the sex ring that you promised to do before you became FBI director.
I just told you, I'm not going to release downloaded porn of
I'm
children
not asking
on the
about
internet.
that. Fine. I'm asking about all the other files.
What other videos? Tell me. Tell me.
That's what I'm asking.
Tell me.
You're saying there are no videos that would be relevant to anyone else involved in the Jeffrey Epstein sex ring.
Pursuant to Mr. Acosta's collection of information based on the search warrants. That's all we have in our possession.
And I'm asking you, that stuff.
That's all we got.
I'm not asking all you got. I'm asking you, in that stuff, there's nothing that's related to any other sex traffic, any other people engaged with Epstein in underage sex.
That's correct. To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Let's talk about the witness interviews. 302s of witness interviews. Those are not subject to the court order. Those are not subject to any fictional sealed order for a search warrant. Why aren't you releasing those with the redacted names of the victims?
We are releasing as much as legally allowed. That's why we went back to the courts.
How is that not legally allowed?
Sir, do you know how court orders work? Do you know how protective orders
Actually,
work? Do you know how
Mr. Patel, I was a real prosecutor for 10 years. I know exactly how
so I was a
court
fake
orders.
one?
And I want to understand what the court order prevents you from releasing witness statements that the FBI took.
You should know that as a real prosecutor, when the court hand downs a protective order and a motion to seal, the material is sealed unless
So
that
your
judge
testimony
waives
here
it.
is that all of those witness statements are under a court order, a protective order.
We are providing everything we can legally provide.
No, that's not my
Congress has
question.
sent us a
My
subpoena.
question is, why are those witness statements that are not grand jury testimony, that if they were under a protective order are no longer under a protective order, why are they not being released?
How are they not
And
under a protective
Why
order?
are you not going to the court like you did for the grand jury testimony to unseal those
The
records?
DOJ did go to the court.
No, not on those records. Why
time
aren't
of
you
the
going? You
gentleman.
just went on grand jury.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The
You are hiding the Epstein files,
time
Mr.
of the gentleman
Patel.
has expired.
You are part of the cover-up.
Can I respond?
Sure can.
Any allegations that I'm a part of a cover-up to protect child sexual trafficking and victims of human trafficking and sexual crimes is patently and categorically false in the work of my
So I hope you will talk to them when they
Gentlemen's
have
time has
requested
expired.
to speak with you. Because
Gentlemen's
the
time has
victims have
expired. Gentleman
requested
yields
and you are
back.
not responding to them.
Director, yes or no? Is yes.
And as the exchange escalated, one thing became clear: Goldman wasn't letting Patel off the hook. The questions got sharper, the answers got weaker, and the cover-up accusations only grew louder. It started with a question that cut straight to the core: do the Epstein files contain references to high-profile figures? On its face it was simple, direct, and almost impossible to misinterpret. Yet Patel hesitated. His answer wasn't a straightforward confirmation or denial. Instead, he leaned on carefully chosen words, saying only that everything legally allowed had already been released to the public. That choice of phrasing lit a fire in the hearing room. If full transparency had truly been delivered, why hide behind the qualifier of legality? Goldman picked up on it immediately. He reminded Patel that Americans had been promised disclosure, but what they received was a heavily filtered version, documents riddled with black bars, interviews locked away, and unexplained omissions that kept the biggest questions unanswered. Patel repeated that restrictions tied his hands, but Goldman wasn't satisfied. The tension was unmistakable. What Patel called compliance, Goldman saw as stonewalling. If the names of influential people were buried in those records, why weren't they openly acknowledged? And if the FBI had nothing to hide, why did every answer sound like another excuse? The exchange set the tone for a clash that was only just beginning. When Goldman pressed for specifics, Patel leaned heavily on the shield of court orders. He explained that multiple rulings, protective motions, and sealed documents tied the Bureau's hands, preventing full disclosure. At first glance it sounded like a legitimate explanation, but Goldman wasn't convinced. He reminded Patel that many of those protective orders had already expired or been lifted in other cases, and that discovery materials once sealed for trials were no longer legally restricted. Goldman's tone sharpened. He accused Patel of hiding behind technicalities instead of leveling with the American public. Were these files sealed to protect victims, or were they being used to protect the reputations of powerful figures? Patel insisted he was simply following the law. Goldman shot back, that's not what the law actually says. The exchange grew heated as both men talked over one another. Patel argued that certain evidence could never be released, while Goldman fired back that his interpretation was just not true. The clash revealed a deeper issue. Was this about legal barriers, or was it about institutional reluctance to open the full vault of Epstein's secrets? And just as the room tensed further, Goldman shifted the spotlight to the most explosive category of evidence: the videos. When the discussion turned to the videos and photographs seized from Epstein's properties, the atmosphere in the hearing room grew even more charged. Goldman wanted answers. What exactly was hidden inside those archives? Patel responded cautiously, claiming that the overwhelming majority of the material amounted to downloaded internet content and illegal abuse imagery, files that could never be made public. On that point, Goldman agreed victims must be protected, but he pressed further. What about recordings tied directly to Epstein's network? What about potential evidence of other powerful figures caught on camera? Patel pushed back hard, insisting that no such material existed. Every video in the Bureau's possession, he said, had already been examined and used in whatever prosecutions were legally possible. To him the matter was closed, but Goldman didn't let go. He asked about specific names, even citing royalty, and questioned why footage that could shine a light on Epstein's circle hadn't surfaced. The denial felt absolute, but it left the public with more questions than answers. If everything had truly been reviewed, why were so many still convinced there was more hidden in the shadows? The tension only deepened as Goldman steered the spotlight toward another key category of evidence: witness statements. The longer the exchange went on, the clearer it became that Patel's strategy was firm denial. He repeated, almost mechanically, that no recordings existed showing influential figures engaged with Epstein. Every video, he said, had been combed through over the course of a decade, and nothing beyond already known material had ever been found. To Patel the case was settled, but Goldman was far from convinced. The congressman pressed harder, pointing out the inconsistencies in Patel's responses. If the Bureau had thousands of hours of footage and endless photographs, how could none of it point to others in Epstein's orbit? Was the FBI asking the public to believe that such a vast collection of evidence revealed nothing new? Goldman openly suggested that Patel was being evasive, hinting at a larger pattern of concealment. Patel bristled at the implication, snapping back that Goldman was supposing facts that are false. But the pushback only fueled more suspicion. The more he denied, the more it seemed like something was being buried. The hearing room buzzed with tension. This wasn't just a disagreement over legal interpretation anymore, it was a high-stakes battle over credibility, and Goldman wasn't done. He shifted the fight to a different trove of evidence: the witness interviews. Goldman's next line of attack cut even deeper. If videos and photographs were off the table, then what about the FBI's own interviews, the 302s documenting conversations with witnesses? These weren't grand jury transcripts, he noted, and they weren't protected by the same restrictions Patel kept citing. In fact, with victims' names redacted, these records could be released tomorrow. So why weren't they? Patel's answer was familiar: protective orders. He claimed those statements were still bound by court restrictions, but Goldman, a former prosecutor himself, wasn't buying it. He pointed out that protective orders aren't permanent and that many dissolve once trials conclude. That's just not true, Goldman snapped, calling Patel's explanation a smokescreen. The clash grew sharper. Goldman accused Patel of cherry-picking what to release and ignoring what the law actually allowed. Patel countered that the Bureau had provided everything it legally could. The two spoke over each other, frustration mounting on both sides. For viewers, the issue boiled down to one question: if there's nothing damaging in those statements, why keep them locked away? Goldman's relentless push left Patel cornered, forced to repeat the same line of defense. And as the argument escalated, the congressman prepared to deliver his boldest charge yet: a full-blown cover-up. By this point, Goldman's patience had evaporated. After hearing the same evasions repeated again and again, he delivered the charge head-on. This wasn't caution, it was concealment. In front of the committee, he accused Patel of stonewalling Congress and participating in a cover-up of the Epstein files. The words hung heavy in the air. For a moment the room froze as everyone processed what had just been said. Patel fired back immediately. He rejected the accusation as patently and categorically false, insisting that neither he nor the Bureau would ever shield predators or betray victims. But Goldman wasn't persuaded. He reminded Patel of his promises made before taking office, pledges of transparency that had never been fulfilled. To Goldman, every withheld file, every redaction, and every excuse pointed to the same conclusion: the public was being kept in the dark. The confrontation reached its peak. Patel doubled down, calling the attack an insult to his work and the FBI's mission. Goldman, meanwhile, framed it as a betrayal of justice, declaring that silence only protected the powerful. The tension was undeniable, but the hearing wasn't just about politics, it was about people. And Goldman saved his final blow for the very voices Patel seemed to be ignoring: the victims themselves. After hours of legal sparring and denials, Goldman brought the conversation back to the one group that could not be ignored: the victims. He reminded Patel that survivors of Epstein's network had been reaching out directly, requesting meetings, demanding answers, and pleading for transparency. Yet their calls, letters, and requests had gone unanswered. To Goldman, this wasn't just a failure of bureaucracy, it was a betrayal of people who had already endured enough. Patel tried to defend himself, insisting that the Bureau's work had always prioritized the protection of victims. But Goldman cut through the rhetoric. Protecting them, he argued, doesn't mean silencing their voices or refusing to release non-sensitive records. Protecting them means respecting their demands for truth. And when victims themselves are asking for the files to be unsealed, what justification could there be for ignoring them? The clash hit harder than any legal argument. This wasn't about statutes or sealed orders anymore, it was about whether the justice system was truly listening to those it was supposed to serve. Goldman's final words carried the weight of their frustration. If the victims are still fighting for recognition, then transparency hasn't been achieved. And that unresolved demand left the hearing echoing with more questions than answers. When the hearing finally closed, the tension lingered like smoke after a fire. Goldman had demanded clarity on names, videos, and witness statements. Patel offered legal barriers, denials, and explanations that felt more like walls than windows. What started as a straightforward line of questioning spiraled into a dramatic standoff, one that left the public wondering if the truth is being revealed or deliberately concealed. At its heart, the clash was about more than legal language or technicalities. It was about trust. Can Americans trust that the full scope of Epstein's network has been exposed? Can survivors trust that their voices matter as much as the reputations of the powerful? Each time Patel leaned on secrecy, Goldman sharpened his accusations, and in that clash the divide became impossible to ignore, one side defending process, the other demanding transparency. But the biggest question remains unanswered. If every stone has truly been turned over, why are victims still begging for the files to be released? Until that day comes, suspicion will only grow. This story is far from over, and neither is the fight for answers. If you want to stay ahead of the revelations and see the truth unfold piece by piece, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you never miss an update.